The NFL draft is here, and it's been really good under Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel throughout his tenure here on Rocky Top. How many Vols are going to get drafted, and in which rounds will they be drafted? Plus, a look back at some of the better NFL draft stories for Tennessee players throughout its history. That and a whole lot more. It's your Thursday Lockdown Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here today. Big thank you to FanDuel for being a part of the show where you can make every moment more. Over at FanDuel, it is America's #1 sportsbook. I am your host, Eric Kane. Again, appreciate you guys making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. You can watch us, listen to us, follow us, subscribe to us, download us. More importantly, download us on the audio side, all for free wherever you get your podcasts. Got a fun show getting into here today. We're going to preview Tennessee Volunteers in the NFL Draft. Talked a little bit about it on yesterday's show, but diving down deep more into it here in segment number 1, and plus looking back at some of the success stories for Tennessee in the NFL Draft. Going to do something fun. This is from SEC this morning over on the SEC Network on Wednesday. If the SEC were to have a player draft for this upcoming football season, which players will be selected in the top 5, the top 10? Where does James Pearce fall into that running? That's coming up in segment 2. And then a new name to keep an eye on in the NCAA basketball transfer portal, Chaz Lanier. Will Tennessee get in on that one? Plus some movement from Tennessee departures. That's coming up in segment number 3. All right, guys. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Shout out everydayers. The NFL Draft, it starts tonight. Tennessee Tennessee won't have any players selected in the first round like it did last year with Darnell Wright going to the Chicago Bears, 10th overall. That's not going to happen this year. Hendon Hooker, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, there was a lot of talk and some buzz about him maybe being a late first rounder. Same with Jalen Hyatt, but in the end, it was Hooker that slid and Hyatt that slid to the third round, and Tennessee had 4 players drafted in the third round last year behind Darnell Wright, going into the first round, 10th overall. Hooker, third round. Hyatt, third round. Cedric Tillman, third round, as he and Hyatt went back-to-back. And then Byron Young in the third round, and boy, was he not fantastic for the Los Angeles Rams this past year. Really successful draft for Tennessee in 2023, and I'll touch on the 2022 and 2021 draft class as well. But looking ahead to what's going to happen this weekend. So you got the first round coming up tonight. You have rounds 2 and 3 coming up on Friday, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 on Saturday. I think Tennessee will have 3 players drafted. I'll go ahead and call it right now. But it's so hard to predict when you get later into day 3 because there'll be so many different trades. What does that team have need-wise? Who does that team want to take a flyer on? I could see McCallum Castles getting drafted. I could see maybe a D. Williams getting drafted. I'm more on that here in a moment. But I feel pretty good about saying Jaylen Wright's going to be a third-round pick. I feel pretty good about saying Kamal Hadden will be probably a 5th or anywhere from 4 to 7, really. If he didn't have a shoulder injury, man, he'd be up there probably 3rd or 4th round in my opinion. But because of the injury, he wasn't able to finish the rest of the season, wasn't able to do anything in the pre-draft process, like the combine, the pro day, stuff like that. He's going to slide, unfortunately. So I'll say he'll go in the 4th round, and I'll say Joe Milton will be selected in the 5th round. I get Daniel Jeremiah saying somebody take a flyer on Joe Milton and all that just because of all the intangibles. I don't think it'll be a flyer. I think somebody will. I guess you could be a flyer if you're in the 5th round too. I mean, somebody's going to jump up there and just say, ooh, God, like I really, really like those intangibles. And so in my opinion, I think Joe Milton, is going to be taken before the 7th round. So I will go Jaylen Wright 3rd round. I will go Kamal Hadden 4th round. I'll go Joe Milton 5th round. And for right now, I'll say that's probably it. But there are some other guys who could be drafted. More on that in a moment. Jaylen Wright, of course, we went over his mock drafts and all that on yesterday's show. Some people mocking him in the 3rd round to the Raiders, later on in the 3rd round to the Packers, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Josh Jacobs just signed with the Packers. It would make more sense if he went to the Raiders, this being Jaylen Wright a couple picks before that. But nonetheless, I think Jaylen Wright probably going to be, at worst, the number 2 running back off the board. Could he be the number 1 running back and overtake the guy from Texas? Potentially. It just depends on, who's there and which team that needs a running back values in Jaylen Wright. Wouldn't shock me at all if Jaylen Wright is the first running back off the board, but I think I can say with some confidence that Jaylen Wright is a part of a running back class that is not very deep. It's not very good for this specific class. Doesn't mean he's not a good player, but the class overall for the position is just not as strong as normal. So I'll say he'll go to the third round. Looking forward to seeing where he goes. Joe Milton, of course, I mentioned he's been mocked in the 7th round to the Buffalo Bills. That's just such an easy comparison that we've talked about. I'll still go with him in the 5th round. Kamal Hadden, I'll go with him in the 4th round. He's been mocked anywhere from the 4th or the 7th. McCallan Castles, it's interesting. You know, he had such a great pro day, and he wasn't invited to the NFL Combine, but his pro day measurables, I forgot off the top of my head, you know, broad, vertical, that type of stuff, 3-cone, L. You know, a lot of those would have been on par with the tight ends at the NFL Combine and would have beaten the tight ends at the NFL Combine. He had a really, really strong pro day. He had a really strong senior season. He came to Tennessee via the transfer portal to try to get some tape in the SEC and to go play in the NFL. Mission accomplished, because he's going to get that opportunity. No matter what, he'll sign, excuse me, if he doesn't get drafted, he'll sign an undrafted free agent deal, and he'll be in a camp this summer. So McCallan Castles is one that's really intriguing to me. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever if they were to take him late. Another one that I do want to highlight is D. Williams. D. Williams is interesting because he never really had a huge career at Tennessee, but he was a return specialist. He did some things in the return game. He returned a couple of different punts for a touchdown, maybe only 2, but the 2 that I remember, of course, at Vanderbilt at the end of 2022 season, and then this past year against Texas A&M. Dynamic in the return game and punt return game. He wasn't as skillful in the kick return game because he was more of a punt returner. I do remember, though, you know, at least at this level, I do remember when Tennessee was recruiting him, and that's back when I was covering recruiting a little bit more than I am now. And I would call him, I would talk to him, I would do his research whenever Tennessee was recruiting him. And I remember asking him, like, you know, or I remember looking up his stats, and it was like 7 kickoff returns for a touchdown one year in JUCO. I'm like, goodness gracious, this guy's going to be dynamic. And he was, and he did a good job. You know, tried to make the transition over to receiver. Never had a big role in Tennessee's offense, of course. But nonetheless, with the new kickoff rules, I think this is one to pay attention to. Now, sure, D. Williams makes the most sense in terms of being an undrafted free agent. But if you kind of go over those new kickoff rules where, you know, you're kicking off from the same yard marker, but all other 10 players on the kickoff team have to be on the opposing 40, can't go until the ball is caught or it hits the ground in the landing zone. The landing zone is anything from the 20-yard line in, and they can't go until the catch is made. Essentially, they're trying to bring special teams and kickoffs back into the game of football, and that's why Mike Tomlin, who I think is fantastic, picked up the phone and went and signed Cordero Patterson from the get-go. As soon as he got word that this was going to pass, it's like, hey, we need a dynamic returner. And so you're going to see a shift and more returns in the NFL game, and I'm super thrilled about that. So on that note, does the team see that and want to value a guy like D. Williams more? Maybe take a 7th-round flyer on him so that they can select him instead of maybe losing out on an undrafted free agent. I think he's one to watch for that purpose only in D. Williams. Some other guys who, of course, are out there trying to get drafted: Jamari Small, Romel Keaton, Ollie Lane. I'm trying to think of the guys who are at Pro Day. Ollie Lane, Jeremiah Crawford, Karat Garland, Aaron Beasley. A lot of those other guys were, at NFL Pro Day or Tennessee's Pro Day, and they'll have an opportunity, some of those guys, to sign undrafted free agent deals. So that's kind of a look into Tennessee in the NFL draft. I mentioned the guys that were drafted last year: Darnell Wright, 10th overall to the Bears in round 1. Hendon Hooker, 3rd round to the Lions. Jalen Hyatt, 3rd round to the Giants. Cedric Tillman, 3rd round to the Browns, and back-to-back picks with he and Hyatt. You had Byron Young, 3 picks after Cedric Tillman. Tennessee just dominated the 70s there in the NFL draft last year. 77th overall, 3rd round to the Rams. Go back to 2022. It was Alontae Taylor, 2nd round to the Saints. He's had a really nice NFL career so far. Velus Jones, 3rd round to the Bears. Matthew Butler, 5th round to the Raiders. Cade Mays, who's had a nice little 2-year start in his NFL career. 6th round to the Panthers. Theo Jackson, who has been on the active roster, made some plays a little bit sparingly on national television. Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. He went to the 6th round to the Titans. Of course, he's with the with the Vikings. I think spent time with some of the Eagles at one point or another. 2021 draft, Josh Palmer, Trey Smith. Those guys were drafted to the Chargers and the Chiefs in the 3rd and the 6th round, respectively. 2020, Darrell Taylor, 2nd round to the Seahawks. Juwan Jennings, 7th round to the 49ers. And boy, he just got paid as well. So those are some guys in recent memory. It's been a really, really nice start for Josh Heupel in terms of turning out NFL talent. And that's something you can sell on the recruiting pitch as well. Look at these guys. 10th overall, if I'm Glenn Ellerby. 10th overall, Darnell Wright. I developed him. Alontae Taylor, 2nd round of the Saints. Tim Banks, Willie Martinez, I developed him, and so on and so forth. So this weekend will be exciting. Starts tonight with the first round. You won't hear any Vols being called tonight, but as the weekend goes on, it should be fun. And, of course, we'll recap and talk about the fits and everything that we've seen from over the weekend on a Monday episode of Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, this is going to be fun. An SEC Players Draft, courtesy of SEC Nation, SEC This Morning, over on the SEC Network from Wednesday. I'm going to take what they did. We're going to do it here on Locked On Vols. That's coming up next here as we continue on with the Thursday show. We've all been there, guys. Either as a player or a fan, it's halftime. The scoreboard isn't looking so pretty. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. Then you got to dig in deep, lift your head up, say to yourself, time to get back in the game. Time to pull off some bank heist and take as much of my friend's money as possible. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's Monopoly that you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards out there, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with Wrecking Ball, charge other players rent on your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and tournaments to get extra rewards and climb that leaderboard. So, get back out there, put your game face on, download Monopoly Go now. It is free in the App Store and at Google Play. That is Monopoly Go. And I'll tell you about our friends over at Game Time. You put in that promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, Locked On College, $20 off your first purchase. It is the app to buy tickets to sporting events, to concerts, to comedy shows, pretty much anything in your area that's entertainment. You can buy a ticket to that via the Game Time app. It is the Game Time app is for the procrastinators like you and me. They'll wait to the last minute to buy tickets to this thing, and the wife's saying, hey, have you got the tickets? Oh, yeah, totally. Forgot all about it. Go to Game Time app. The tickets get cheaper the closer you get to the event, and they have the lowest price guarantee, to where if you find a cheaper ticket for, where you found the Game Time app in the same section, they're going to credit you 110% of that ticket price. So all that and more is over on the Game Time app. Go check it out today. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, Locked On College, $20 off. You can download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, guys, welcome back into your Thursday morning Locked On Vols. As I mentioned in segment 1, going to have a little fun here in segment 2. This is from SEC This Morning with Peter Burns and some others, and I thought it was really, really fun. I thought it was a cool exercise. He put out there, if the SEC held a players draft for the upcoming college football season, who would be your top 3 picks? We'll do top 5 picks to have a little fun. And a lot of people are chiming in, sending in their favorite player off their favorite team and so on and so forth. Some media personalities around were sending in their picks as well. So I thought this would be an interesting topic, and it kind of reminds me of the topic that I do before each and every Tennessee football season. I did it with Tyler Ivins on our morning show over on 99.1 The Sports Animal, so I want to give credit where credit's due. I did it with Brian Rice on this show last year, if you remember, where we alternate picks, and I pick a Tennessee player, somebody else picks a Tennessee player, so on and so forth. And so that's a whole lot of fun, but this is kind of SEC wide right here. So, who are some of the names that kind of come to mind if we're going to draft our top 5 SEC players for the 2024 season? Well, as the Tennessee background, as Tennessee fans, the first one we're going to say is James Pearce, and rightfully so. James Pearce arguably could be, one of the first, if not the top defensive draft pick in this year's class. Max Chadwick over at Pro Football Focus said that. There's been a lot of other columnists around the country that have said that as well about James Pearce, and that's something that is really, really cool. So in this conversation, James Pearce obviously would be towards that top of the list. So James Pearce is up there. Luther Burden, the wide receiver over at Missouri, is up there as well. He's going to be a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. 5-star freshman, came in, did a little bit, I'll say a little bit more, did a little bit more than a little bit as a freshman, took off this past year. Really, really talented player for Eli Drinkwitz. Oh, gross coach, but that offense this year with Brady Cook, Luther Burden was a true weapon. And so he would be in this conversation. Harold Perkins at LSU would be in this conversation. And he's interesting, though, because when we're talking about NFL draft, is he an off-the-ball linebacker or on-the-ball linebacker? Is he an edge or is he a backer? That's the question you got to ask with Harold Perkins, because he's done both at LSU. A lot of success as being an off-the-edge guy as a younger guy, but they've moved him back, and he's been an off-ball backer here lately, and he's probably the most important part of LSU's defense. But in terms of draft and stock, backers aren't really highly publicized, same as running backs and all that. But, college is a little bit different, right? I mean, one player, that's why, somebody asked a really good question on, I believe it was the Mailbag podcast for VolQuest last week, with NIL in relation to building an NFL team. Running backs don't get paid an awful lot. Is that going to be kind of the same with NIL? And for the most part, it's teams are structured the same. Quarterbacks get money, edge rushers get money, tackles get money. Sometimes a wide receiver can get money. But the running backs, the linebackers, the interior linemen on both sides of the line of scrimmage, the secondary guys, you don't get an awful lot of money. Safeties, cornerbacks get more than safeties do. But in the college game, a lot of times one player can be, make up the difference. Trevor Etienne, who went from Florida to Georgia, who had a little off the field issues this past offseason, but really, really good player. Judkins going from Ole Miss to Ohio State. And of course, that's a crowded running back room up there. But, there's some dynamic running backs in the game, and so they're going to get paid a little bit. But for the most part, running backs, linebackers don't get paid an awful lot. So anyway, that was a sidebar, but that made me think of when I made me think of that when I was looking at Harold Perkins. Other names around the SEC, Kelvin Banks, who Tennessee was very, very high on. Excuse me. Jim Chaney was recruiting him when he was Tennessee's offensive coordinator whenever Jeremy Pruitt was here. So Tennessee was recruiting him, but ultimately he stayed home and went to Texas. He's a guy that comes to mind. Will Campbell, offensive tackle from LSU, one of the best tackles in the nation. Carson Beck, quarterback from Georgia, of course. He's probably the most accomplished quarterback left in the SEC right now. Malachi Starks, a safety from Georgia who's been around for quite some time. Nick Scorton, formerly of Purdue, now at Texas A&M at linebacker. He's one to keep an eye on. Trevor Etienne, again, the running back from Georgia, formerly of Florida that I mentioned. How would you guys kind of rate these if we're saying, all right, who's going to be our top 5? No, number 5, I go Harold Perkins. Number 5, I go Harold Perkins, the linebacker. Number 4, I would go Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle for Texas. Number 3, I would go Will Campbell, offensive tackle for LSU. Number 2, I would probably go Luther Burden, wide receiver, and then number 1, I'd go James Pearce, the edge. I was shocked at a lot of the comments, from this tweet from Peter Burns talking about what they were doing on their radio show. James Pearce was, in the second tier of players. Like what are we doing here? James Pearce is not only one of the best edge rushers last year from the Southeastern Conference, he's one of the best returning defensive players in all of the country for 2024. He's getting so much draft hype right now, and he's not even draft eligible. Talking about the guy that could potentially go number 1 overall in the draft next year, or top 10, be your first defensive player. I feel like James Pearce needs to be a little, deserving a little bit more in this conversation, at least that I've seen on the line here on a Wednesday. So James Pearce will be number 1 for me, because if you have a dynamic guy that can get after the quarterback, it makes your defense. Still got to make tackles in space. Still got to, wrap, shoot, drive, and all that type of stuff. You still got to make open field tackles. Still got to go and cover. But if you have a guy that's coming off the edge and forcing quarterbacks into bad decisions and forcing premature throws and all that type of stuff, it just makes your secondary that much better. Plus, drop back on 1st and 10, sack, make it 1st and 20. 3rd and 5, sack, 4th and 12. It's a game changer. So that's why James Pearce, Tennessee podcast, I know that, but James Pearce would be my number one player that I would draft from the SEC this year. What say you? Again, number 5 for me would be Harold Perkins, linebacker, LSU. Number 4 would be Will Campbell, offensive tackle, LSU. Number 3 would be Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle from Texas. Number 2 would be Luther Burden from Missouri. And number 1 would be James Pearce from Tennessee. Fun conversation that was had over on SEC this morning, Sirius XM, with Peter Burns and, of course, the SEC Network. Credit to them for the topic here in segment number 2 of Locked On Vols here on a Thursday. Thought it was a whole lot of fun, and I think you did as well. Send me in who your top 5 would be. Would love to hear it right here on the show. Hey, when we come back, a name to keep an eye on in the transfer portal for Tennessee and some news for the Tennessee Volunteers basketball team in the transfer portal. That is coming up next as we continue on with Locked On Vols. Want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. It is America's number one sportsbook. Playoff time, NBA, NHL, baseball is in full swing. FanDuel is the place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? All you need to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Baseball season is here. Playoffs are happening. It's fun. The NHL, NBA, golf happening on the weekends, and of course, NASCAR is where I like to put some coin in my pocket by taking part in NASCAR parlays over at FanDuel Sportsbook. $150, bonus bets guaranteed. Just put in FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, it is America's number one sportsbook. All right, guys, we've got a final segment here of this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. We're going to talk a little Tennessee hoops. As you guys know, I record, late afternoon, early evening the night before. So if anything happens in the hours, later in the day, I don't usually hit on it until the next show because, I have a life and everything, and the transfer portal's fast and furious. I will say this. I feel like Tennessee in the transfer portal for basketball, things are starting to come together. You're going to start, in my opinion, by the end of this week to really have a feel of what Rick Barnes' roster and lineup is going to look like for the 2024-2025 basketball season. Of course, Darlington Stone-Dubar is already in. Okay, he's your wing player from Hofstra. Tennessee has already hosted and done really, really well with Igor Milicic earlier this week and last weekend. I think Tennessee, I feel like from everything I've heard, that Tennessee's in a really good spot there. Tennessee, held on and visited with Felix Okparara from Ohio State, a center, and that visit went very well, very well. Wouldn't shock me whatsoever if one of those guys potentially is in the boat by the time that you listen to this show. But my point is, it feels like Tennessee's done a great job of positioning themselves with some key targets in the transfer portal, and I think Tennessee will certainly get at least one of the two of Okpara or Igor. I would say right now, just in my opinion, everything I've heard, maybe they're going to get them both, which would be really, really good. And it would almost pretty much signal the end, just like we talked about with Grant, of Tobe Awaka returning. And it's a shame. I think Tobe Awaka is a fan favorite, and I think there's a lot to like about Tobe Awaka. But, once Jonas entered, man, the door was open. You could have came right back if it was truly all about, which I don't think he was trying to chase money at all, but if it was truly all about playing time, I mean, there's your lane, no pun intended, right? But everybody likes to be courted. Everybody likes to be, people telling them how good they are. I mean, I get it. You're human. And so that's kind of unfortunate. But if Tennessee were to land both Felix Okpara and Igor Milicic, that's signaling the end of Tobe Awaka at Tennessee. So, again, Darlington Stone-Dubar is in. We'll see about Okpara. We'll see about Milicic. Tennessee's really doing a good job of kind of, again, like I said, assembling their roster with 5 open scholarships left for the Tennessee Volunteers basketball team. Another name that is one that we need to pay attention to, because Tennessee and pretty much every high roller in college basketball is going to be in on this one, and that is Chaz Lanier. Chaz Lanier's been rumored to have entered the transfer portal for weeks now. He even went out and thanked North Florida, thanked the coaching staff, thanked the fans and all that. But he didn't officially announce his intentions, or the news didn't officially break that he is going to enter the portal until Wednesday afternoon. But that is what Chaz Lanier is going to do. He's a guard from North Florida, combo guard. going to enter the transfer portal, but go through the NBA draft process and keep his options open. A lot of people do that nowadays. Olivier Kamal did that last year. Grant Williams did that in the years past. Josiah Jordan-James did that last year as well. Go through the NBA draft process, get coached up, get some feedback, and then if you're not going to be, likely selected, you come back and play college ball. And so Chaz Lanier has given himself another option because there's not too many guards that have been drafted to the NBA's 2-round draft out of North Florida. Tennessee, I would imagine, would be very interested in a guy like Chaz Lanier, as would, again, tons of other programs around the country. Why is that? Well, 6'4", 200 pounds. He attended Innsworth in the Mid-State. He is a Tennessee native. Okay, so you kind of got that homeschool feel for you. He averaged 19.7 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, 1.8 assists per game, and over 33 minutes per game this past year, shooting 51% from the field, 44% from downtown. That's efficient. He's a scorer. Now, Tennessee already got a scorer on the wing from Dubar and Hofstra. Okay, Lanier would be a great scorer. Okay, and then you've got if you land, Agpara, that's a true stretch 4. And I don't know. There's just a lot to like about the type of athletes and the type of guys that Tennessee is going after and is real conversation with and adding to this roster. So, Chaz Lanier, again, has been a guy that has been linked to Tennessee a lot, even though he hasn't been in the transfer portal, just because of what he's already done on social media and because he is from the state of Tennessee. Chaz Lanier is a name to very much be on the lookout for throughout the next couple of weeks. The transfer portal closes on May the 1st. You don't have to announce where you're going to go by May the 1st, but you just have to be in there. And so that's what Chaz Lanier is doing. He's in the transfer portal. And if Tennessee can make it work, I'm sure they're going to, be very interested in Chaz Lanier. And that would be a really, really good bolster to the roster that is going to contend for another SEC championship, next year for sure in the regular season. So 5 spots are left. What we do know right now is some of these players have entered the transfer portal. Jonas Adu, Toby Awaka, DJ Jefferson, who announced his commitment to a Big South school in Longwood on Wednesday. He's in the portal. Freddie DeLeon in the transfer portal. He announced his commit to Penn State on Wednesday as well. And of course, you have Bishop Boswell coming in from the high school ranks. Already, I'm liking this team for next year. We need to see if Tennessee can finish, if Tennessee can close on Igor Milicic and Agpara, Felix Agpara, and man, if you can get them both, gosh, that is cooking with some peanut oil for sure. But we'll see exactly what that looks like as the week goes on. Again, I feel like by the end of the week, Tennessee is going to be in a really, really good position, really, really good shape to have a really strong basketball team for next year. I'll just kind of leave it at that. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Fast and Furious, covered a lot of ground, had a whole lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Let me know who your top 5 players would be from the Southeastern Conference. There's even great players that I left out. I mean, no mention of Nico in there. No mention of any of Tennessee's wide receivers. There's a lot of good players that didn't even get mentioned, across the conference. So let me know who your top 5 would be if you were drafting SEC football players in honor of the NFL draft for this next football season. All right. Appreciate you guys as always. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch. We will do it again tomorrow to wrap up a work week right here on Locked On Vols. Until then, stay safe. Have a great Thursday, everybody.